Hello and welcome to ESO Vault. Today's build is a Stamina Templar damage dealer that uses one of the new sets from the Endless Archive. Like my other videos, this isn't a meta build aimed at highly experienced players. It's a build that can be used by average players of the game, which includes me. I feel overly qualified to represent the average player. While not a meta build, this build has been thoroughly play tested and is guaranteed to be able to do the majority of the content in the game. Although the build uses one of the new sets from the Endless Archive, the set isn't required to play the build. Skills and the order they're used in is always my focus, and that way, even if you can't or don't want to get the gear, you'll find some takeaways. I'm going to continue to focus on the core concepts that I used when I started the channel originally, and that's the 3 R's: readily obtainable gear, reproducible rotations, and reachable DPS. I may break the gear rule sometimes to keep things interesting, but the gear is always going to be optional. Alright, let's get on with today's build, Sun's Wrath. You can see that the character's a Nord, and there was no rationale other than I wanted to play a Nord. Bonuses Nords have that would help a stamina damage dealer include bonuses to health and stamina. Nords generally aren't a top pick for players chasing max numbers, but I appreciate the extra health because then I don't have to go finagling things around to get that where I like it. As always, I encourage you to just play the race you want to play. Over on the left, you see I've got the obligatory 64 points in stamina. Anymore, I tend to gloss over the character sheet because it's not necessarily going to look like that on your setup, depending on what level you are, your champion points, and your current gear. If you've got a lot of champion points and the gear, it'll look something like this. Health will be in the 20,000 range, and stamina will be 30-ish. My stamina recovery is 1300, which is enough for this build. I have 4,600 points of weapon damage, which is typical. If you get into a group where you're getting a lot of buffs to that, it can basically double. My weapon critical chance is at a base of 36% before any buffs, and that will go over 50 when I'm playing. Penetration is at 4,000. I'm going to break my rule of not talking about that. I'm assuming that you'll want to run dungeons at some point. If you're in a dungeon group, the tank can reduce the boss's resistance considerably. Depending on debuffs to armor the other two players may provide, it can be super easy to go over the cap, which is 18,000, if you invest in penetration. That's why I always say don't. Alright, I did it. I talked about penetration. Let's move on. Down at the bottom you can see that I'm using my usual food buff, which is lava foot soup and salt rice. You can get this recipe from the New Life Festival, which is coming up soon, or you can just buy the stuff from guild traders. Lava foot soup gives me stamina and stamina recovery, and on a stamina damage dealer, that's what I want. My Mundus Stone is the thief, which gives me extra critical chance. Don't take the lever. I just talked about not investing in penetration. You didn't forget already, did you? Okay, that's all the time I'm giving to the character sheet. Before I start talking about skills, I'll say that gear choice did influence the selection of one skill, and I'll mention that when I talk about that one. This is a traditional 2-bar setup, which is simplified by a static rotation, i.e. a rotation where I don't change the order I use the skills in. I'll start on the back bar, which is an Inferno staff. First is Solar Barrage, which causes a blast of solar energy around me, doing damage to enemies every 2 seconds. A little bit of trivia for you, which may come into play on another build. Only ground AoEs fire every second. All others are every other second. Solar Barrage is in your Templar class skills kit, and this is the one skill that I'm mostly running to proc the Wrath Sunset. All the other skills I was running anyway. Next in the rotation is Reflective Light, another class skill that does damage over time, and this one affects up to 3 targets. Over on the left I've got Elemental Susceptibility, which is a destruction staff skill and arguably one of the best skills in the game. This is my Major Breach skill, which reduces the enemy's armor, and every 7 seconds it applies 3 damaging status effects to the target. Did I mention this is a free cast? Well, it sure is. Last is another Destro staff skill, Blockade of Fire. This increases my weapon damage if I'm running the Infused trait and a weapon damage glyph on the staff. This is also a powerful damage over time area effect skill. Don't leave home without it. I've got my usual heal, which is Resolving Vigor from the Assault skill line. Go do some PvP and get this skill. It's hard to get by without it. Last is my own personal mini-sun, Solar Prison, which is a class ultimate which I can send crashing down on enemies. Okay, let's go to the main or damage bar. First I use Stampede, which is a powerful AoE skill and a handy gap closer, all rolled into one. Then I'll drop down Barb Trap. Barb Trap is from the Fighters Guild and does so-so damage, but it also provides minor force, increasing my damage by 5%, and busts my weapon damage just for having it slotted. Even if you don't need minor force, you're still going to slot this 9 out of 10 times because of that passive Fighter's Guild buff. Next is Power of the Light, which records damage being done to the enemy, and at the end of its duration, deals a portion of that damage back to the enemy. This is another Templar class skill from the Dawn's Wrath skill line. Now for the Templar's signature spammable skill, Biting Jabs. This is a channeled skill that does damage to targets directly in front of me. When my target gets low on health, I'm going to replace this with my class Execute Radiant Oppression, otherwise known as the Jesus Beam. This beam is such a powerful execute that it's going to end most fights in a hurry. You can spam it quite a bit, but be mindful that it uses magicka, not stams, so don't get too crazy with it. Last on the bar is the Fighter's Guild Ultimate, Flawless Dawnbreaker, which is only here for that Fighter's Guild passive buff I get for slotting it. Alright, that wraps up skills, which is the important part here. Let's do a quick fight with the usual punching bag boss to see what they do. I pulled a switch. This isn't No-Meg Rhyme. This is worthless brother No-Meg Hyrule. I did something else. I flipped to the two-handed bar and zapped this guy with jabs to get the major brutality buff. And then when I switched back to the other bar, I used reflective light and got major savagery. I don't do that in a real fight. I just did it for this parse to eke out a little extra damage. Hey, did you see that second Nova hit the ground? That's the Wrath Sunset. That's what it does. It drops extra ultimates and it increases the damage of my Dawn's Wrath skills. There it goes again. So that's 3 Novas in a 40-second fight. Of course the ones from the Wrath Sunset are minis, which seem like they do about half damage. Time for the Jesus Beam. Good night. What's the damage? 43,000? I say you can take that just about anywhere you want to go. So the Wrathful Novas did damage by themselves, but more importantly, they buffed my Dawn's Wrath skills like Radiant Oppression. This set will do best when it procs during the execute phase, and you can lead into Radiant Oppression. 40 stacks of Sunlight from the set were up for half the fight, so during that time I got extra damage from my Dawn's Wrath skills, plus 2 extra Novas. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, if you run the Wrath Sunset, you need to have it active on both bars. Otherwise, in real fights, your uptime can fall way off as you might expect. That was my experience. I want you to look at the peak penetration during this fight, 13,000, and there's nobody here but me. This guy and all dungeon bosses have only 18,000 points of resistance. You see how easy it is to hit the penetration cap? Don't build into penetration in PvE. Okay, here's the gear section. I've got a Deadly Strike Greatsword with a precise trait and a flame damage enchant on the front bar. Back bar is a Maelstrom Perfected Inferno staff. No Maelstrom staff? No worries. Run Deadly Strike or any other staff for that matter. Just make sure the trait is infused with a weapon damage enchant if you're going to get the most out of it. You can get Deadly Strike from vendors in Cyrodiil or guild traders. I think this is the second time Deadly Strike has appeared in the last few videos, but get used to it. Any build that has a lot of damage over time and or channeled attacks will benefit from Deadly Strike. Deadly Strike is S tier, top gear for Templars and Arcanists. The Templar has 2 channeled attacks for its main attacks, Jabs and Radiant Oppression. Moving down the page, I've got the Slime Craw Helm on for a boost to weapon critical chance. Get that out of Veteran Wayrest sewers when you can. And now we get to the Wrath Sunset, which I already talked about really. That comes from the Endless Archive. You don't have to go very far to get the new archival currency and buy the pieces. Don't want the grind? Don't do it then. Drop any other set into this slot you want. Skills and rotations still apply. By the way, as far as the look of the set, the shoulders, the hands, and the feet are in that style if you're interested. I'm interested in the styles. If I can't dress my characters in cool shit, I wouldn't be bothered to play this game. That's a part of the draw for me. It's a fantasy role-playing game, and I want to indulge that fantasy at least a little. Okay, next you can see I'm wearing the Velothi Mage's Amulet again. This is a difficult mythic to get because you have to get one of the leads from the trophy vault at the end of the Scrivener's Hall dungeon. But you don't have to do it on Veteran. Do it on Normal. Some of the other leads can be a pain too. Drop in another mythic if you want, or just run a full Monster Helm setup. If you got a good connection to the server, a fast PC, and good light attack weaving, you don't need a mythic at all in this slot. Your call. You be the judge of where you're at in the game, what your capabilities are, and what pieces of gear you want to include or leave out. The rest of the jewelry on this is in the Bloodthirsty trait with weapon damage and chance. And on this one, if there's any way that you can, try to get Bloodthirsty. Because this is a setup that has a really strong execute phase because of Radiant Oppression. You always want to try to amplify what a build naturally leans into. A quick word on champion points. If you have enough for these 4 slottables in the blue tree, you want Master at Arms, Biting Aura, Thaumaturge, and Wrathful Strikes. How did I arrive at these? A mix of experience, preference, and trial and error. And I think the average player will get the most mileage out of these 4. A couple more things I forgot to mention. This build can run on tri-stat potions like you get in the monthly rewards. The build has Major Brutality and Major Savagery built into the skills, so no making or buying expensive potions. Tied into that, I want to mention the major drawback of the Wrath Sun set. When you hit that 40 stacks and drop that Nova, you lose half your Magicka. This set is a no-go on a Magicka Templar. Because this is a Stamplar, that's not such a big deal. And because you can chug a tri-stat potion when you need to, this works out great. Well, here we are at the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the Sun's Wrath Templar build. I probably forgot or glossed over a bunch of things, but you guys are smart and creative people, so I'm sure you can put the pieces together. That's all I've got. Thanks for watching the video. I'm Centurion, and you've been watching ESO Vault. If you want more Elder Scrolls content like this, be sure to like the video and subscribe. Have a great day, and enjoy your adventures in Tamriel.